I want to talk about Mars. So we see Mars and just space in general. We see, as time goes on, we see more and more billionaires, trillionaires, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Richard Branson. I mean, there's this obsession with space. And Elon says, I believe he wants to occupy Mars by, is it 2025?
Yeah.
And why is the fascination in space? Has all of Earth been discovered? I mean,
no.
Is it hopeless here? Why is everybody moving to space?
Yeah, well, in their mind, it's hopeless here. And so we haven't even, really looked at the oceans that much. There's so much going on here on this planet. We haven't explored a lot of Earth. There's so much more to explore. However, based on the way we're set up as a global economic system, and you look at what's going on, it just seems to a lot of billionaires that the next big move is, let's go create a breakaway civilization and start our own thing over here, basically is what it is. And so we know that Mars has a lot of data over the last several decades. Why? Because we've sent so many missions to Mars, and so has Russia as well. If you look at the total amount of missions to Mars with rovers and satellites and calculate the expenditure, you're in the trillions of dollars. Now, why would anybody spend trillions of dollars to go visit a cold, dry rock? So it makes these billionaires start asking questions, and then they're in the in crowd so they can get some answers, and they find out that Mars is not exactly what we've been told in terms of habitability. We found out that Mars, we were told, was a cold, dry rock with no magnetic field, and DNA would just unravel based on the radiation. All of a sudden, the new science has come out. Mars has a rotating magnetic field. And not only that, it spins on its axis almost at the same exact speed of Earth. So a day on Mars is like 23.5 hours. And so that speed of the rotation on its axis creates something called bow shock, which bends and warps cosmic rays and radiation around the planet, along with the weakened magnetic field. You can actually survive. Anything with DNA can survive on the surface. Also now, the science data has come back from the REMS unit we sent there, and there's oxygen.
There is oxygen.
There is oxygen on Mars. Yes, there's oxygen. Not only that, guess what they said about the soil? They said the soil on Mars is better for growing crops than the soil on Earth.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. How would they know this, right? Also, there's not just oxygen, but all the other gases that are needed to sustain biological life. Now, is oxygen still leaking into the atmosphere? Yes, it's still leaking out into the atmosphere, but there's somewhere being generated. They keep finding more and more oxygen is being generated from somewhere as it's leaking. So who's creating or what is creating this oxygen? I believe, my personal opinion, this is not in any science book, that there are trees and plant life on Mars based on some of the satellite images that I've seen. I'm going to send you some to show to your viewers with the source links and so they can look it up themselves and see for themselves what I'm looking at. I believe that there's a source that is generating, and they've also found a lot of methane. Why is there methane? Methane is usually a byproduct of a biological process. There's a lot of methane on Mars, which means something is alive and something is creating waste product. Now, I don't see any cows on TV on Mars, so something's up there. They don't want to tell us what it is. So my personal opinion, based off of my research and what I've seen in some of these anomalies that exist in the images, they are building a breakaway civilization on Mars because that's the next big place to go and create their own thing. And there's an infrastructure that is being built there for a very, very long time. And when they arrive, they are going to inhabit those infrastructures. They're not going to be living in a tin can and walking around in a spacesuit until they die. Billionaires that have the creature comforts of this planet, oceans, lakes, rivers, private jet flights, parties and mansions and everything else, aren't going to go live in a tin can until they die. There's something up there that they know exists, and they're going to live in it. Most of it, I believe, is underground, subterranean, and that's where they're going. And it's a great place to become an explorer. I wouldn't mind going to Mars. If I can get a way to get a ticket to Mars, I actually believe I would go. I would love to see some of these anomalies that I found up there with my own eyes.
I need to correct myself. It's by 2050. They're
2050?
saying Mars will be inhabited.
Well, actually, he's changed that. Okay, look at some of the older articles. Originally, it was 2020. Then I believe it was 2025, then 2030. Now it's 2050. Originally, he wanted to take 80,000 people. Then it went up from there. I think it's now 1 million people he wants to do it with. So it keeps changing. You might have heard 2025 or read it somewhere before, but the timeline keeps changing as the reality of the technology accomplishing its mission changes. And he's utilizing something extremely dangerous to get there. I would never go with Elon Musk technology because it has too many components. First, it has to lift off from Earth and go into space, not with no people on it. Then it's got to build its own space little station up there, right? And it's going to fuel up. And then another thing has to launch and connect to that. And then they both have to take off and go to Mars. And then something's got to detach and go down to the surface and start building things and doing this and doing that and getting fuel ready for a return or whatever they need for whatever they need to create on the surface. And then after years of that going on, then people get in the ship and they take off and this other thing has to come back and they got to connect to that and they got to ride that to Mars. It's like, come on. You know how many accidents can happen? Are you kidding me? This is like a bad deck of cards just waiting to collapse. One mistake anywhere in any component and everybody's dead. So to me, it's a joke. I mean, I'd rather go on Branson. Richard Branson has a better idea. He's got a space plane. It takes off, it flies into space, it comes back. It doesn't even have the heat tiles underneath it because it drops through the atmosphere and comes straight back in, and then it flies back to the ground. I'd rather go on something like that than go on something that has 100,000 connections that have got to be made before you can even step foot on the surface.
Yeah. Why do you think that these elitists are done here on Earth?
You know, it's like, how many times can you beat a dead horse? And the big problem we have is a lot of people are waking up now, right? Evidence of that is the fact that we're sitting here talking about this on this podcast to millions of people. I'm on mainstream TV shows. I'm on History Channel, Discovery Channel, Science Channel, Travel Channel. I'm on mainstream shows talking about these topics because people want to hear them now. When I first started talking about this stuff, I would hide in the bushes and talk to one like friend. And now all of a sudden I could talk to the world through many different platforms. So the world is waking up. The world is changing and becoming a much different place. And how long will it be before the people say, we're not going to play your game anymore. We're just done. And this whole thing shifts in another direction. And that could cause a lot of turmoil and in the transition process, a lot of wars, infighting, civil wars. It can cause economic collapses, which can cause a lot of starvation and poverty in the interim while things recoalesce. And they're thinking, you know what, how can we avoid all of this? Let's just go to Mars, start fresh.
That's interesting. I mean, what do you in your mind, do you think this is going to happen by 2050?
I believe it could happen before then, actually. Yeah, I think that the technology he's talking about utilizing is basing it on technology from like 2015. That any technology that's using now was developed 10 years ago. And so by 2050, you're talking about technology that he probably had developed maybe in 2038 or something like that. So I think it'll happen a lot sooner than that. And I have a lot of, I'm an optimist. I have optimistic mentality. I believe that I have a lot of optimism in humanity that we are going to come through this time in our short lifespan on this planet through what we're doing to each other, the divide and conquer tactics, the separation, the division. We're going to see through all this illusion that's been put on us and programmed into our bodies. I think eventually we're going to rise up and take back control of this planet, reform this global economic system in something that's positive, that works. And I believe we're going to start heading back towards a golden age again. There were golden ages in the past on this planet, and I believe that we're headed back to another one again. It's going to take some time. It's a gradual, slow process, but look where we came from in only 100 years, like I said earlier. A horse, buggy, and carriage are putting cars in space. So I believe that it's going to happen. I think that we've gotten past this nuclear scare, my personal opinion. I think that the beings up there let us know by showing up at these flights and these missile silos and deactivating our nukes that we weren't going to be able to use them whether we wanted to or not anyway, after what we did to Japan and so forth. And so I just believe that we're in a stage right now where we got past destroying ourselves. And after we get through this arduous process of learning how to walk, because we're children, we got to learn how to walk, then we'll learn how to run. It's going to take some time, but we'll get there. So if you look at Mars, you'll find that a lot of the anomalies are kind of really resemble ancient structures on Earth. Not only that, we've actually discovered things that look like, and we can't say they are because we're not there, that look like ankhs. You know, the shape of the Egyptian ankh. We found quite a few laying on the surface of Mars in different areas and so forth. How in the world can the Egyptian ankh be on Mars? Things carved into sides of mountains that look like Egyptian motif. Why would that be on Mars and on Earth? Building remnants of what looks like ancient structures that resemble the same construction technique that we see in Peru and Bolivia and Egypt and everywhere else. And so it's like, why in the world would we see something so similar on Mars and on Earth? What is the connection? When you go into the ancient Sumerian tablets, you discover that there were beings living on Mars called the Igigi in these ancient tablets. They were the working class Anunnaki people, and they were up there creating a breakaway civilization, but the atmosphere was very harsh as it is today. And so they were complaining to their rulers who were on Earth, Enki, Enlil, and Anu, that the conditions up there were kind of harsh, and they don't mind it, but they would just like to have a break. And they also said, and by the way, we would love to have some women too. They didn't have any women, supposedly. They wanted some women, and they wanted to take a rest. And so they weren't given a break. And so in the Epic of Atrahasis, they decided to go to war against the kings of Earth. These are the sons of God. Anu was called the God figure, and his sons would be these Igigi beings, the sons of God that fell to Earth and rebelled against God. They came down from Mars to Earth. They encircled the campus in South Africa called Adam's Calendar. And the whole thing is scripted out in this tablet, how they were about to go to war, literally, and fight. And then Enki says, I have an idea. There's an existing hominid on this planet. We can add our essence to it and get it to bear your load. So an agreement was made and the war was thwarted that one time. And eventually they did go to war. However, these beings were traveling back and forth from Earth to Mars. They had the same construction technique, the same concepts, the same knowledge and everything else, the same blueprints. And they were building a concurrent running civilization on Mars that was running on Earth. And that's why when you look at some of these images, we meaning my team of anomaly hunters, have downloaded over 1 million images and have cataloged over 60,000 amazing anomalies from Mars image data that shows you this is not just a rare thing, a rare occurrence. It's circumstantial evidence that links Mars to Earth. Another incredible thing, remember they said they took women back with them in this tablet. The human being, circadian rhythm, is actually more in tune to Mars' daylight and night cycle than the Earth daylight night cycle. That's real biology, real science. That's interesting. So you start putting all these pieces of the puzzle together, and all of a sudden, it looks like we have a direct connection with Mars, the god of war. And why the god of war? Because in that last war, according to the tablets, it extended all the way to Mars. And what has happened on Mars? It looks like it was in a war. And when you analyze the Mars Global Surveyor data and the other data from the rovers, you find that there's xenon in the atmosphere and xenon in the soil. But not any kind of xenon, weapons-grade xenon. That's a byproduct of nuclear warfare. Where'd that come from? Pretty interesting.
Very interesting.
Hey everyone, this is Billy Carson, aka Forbidden Knowledge. I want to tell you about an amazing online academy that I created in order to help people become the best version of themselves. If you're into self-improvement, if you're into financial literacy, entrepreneurship, ancient wisdom, all those amazing teachings, I put them all in one place. Over 150 hours of amazing teachings in one place called the Forbidden Knowledge Academy. You can simply get there by going to 4BKacademy.com.